Dan Savage on the myth of the one and the unsettling secret of lasting love. How the lies we tell each other can become our greatest springboard for self-transcendence. So there's this great video of Dan Savage on YouTube called The Price of Admission. I highly recommend everyone go watch it. I would play it here. I just don't think we have the time. Basically, I'll sum it up for you. So he's standing here giving this talk, and he's someone that like writes about sex and relationships and things like that. And he's giving this talk, and someone in the crowd raises their hand and says, everyone I date has something wrong with them. They are clicking their gum, or they don't put the dishes away, or whatever the thing is. And I always got to break up with these people. Why are guys so blah, right? And he's sitting there and he pauses and he goes, well, the problem's you. And this is what we always say on our live streams here, right? If everyone's an asshole, you're the asshole. So analyze yourself first before throwing stones at the world. And so he says, the problem is you. If snapping your gum is a deal breaker, you have too many deal breakers. And so what he says is the price of admission. Everyone is allowed 5 deal breakers. Maybe it's your religion. Maybe it's the fact that you want kids and they don't. Maybe it's where in the world you want to live. The interesting thing about it is you can have some deal breakers, but they should be limited to 5 if possible. And he gives a great example about his partner and him, who apparently his partner, he never puts away like dishes. They're just always out, uses a dish, leaves it out, uses a dish, leaves it out. And they would get into these massive fights about it. And so he would see the dish, get upset, get into a fight, and then they would put the dish away, and then the next day there'd be more dishes. And they would do it again and again and again and again. And this repetitive fighting would never solve the problem, but would create distance between him and his partner. And so one day he just decided to put the dish away. Oh, wow, that was easy. No fight, no mess, no stress. Maybe putting dishes away for this person is just the price of admission. Maybe in order, as he puts it, to ride this ride, I have to be willing to have dishes out or be willing to put dishes away without getting upset. And it's no longer a deal breaker. It's just the price of admission. What's the price that we pay to spend time with our family? What's the price that we pay to work remotely? What's the price that we pay to do our job? What's the price that we pay in every aspect of our life? There is a price to be paid to do any kind of job. There is a price to be paid to make a shift. What is that price? Yesterday on the Meetup, we were talking about, someone who was very far along in their career, recently laid off, was contemplating needing to move back home with family in order to be able to weather the storm of the COVID crisis. Now, are you willing to do that? I have a post-it on my wall in the other room. I've been wanting to make a video about this forever, but I haven't had the words. And the post-it says, are you willing to move home with your family and go broke in order to have the career that you want? If you're not willing to do that, you don't want that career bad enough. What are you willing to actually do to get to where you want to go? For me, I was willing to quit a job and pay $1,200 for an online coaching course and utilize that to change careers, and then leave another job in order to start a business, in order to learn a new set of skills and change careers again over the course of a 7-year period. Now, I went back at one point and I tallied up how much money it cost me to launch my first business that failed. When I was about to launch that company, I was offered a job. I was currently making about, I want to say around like 60,000, maybe a little less, maybe a little more. I was working in advertising. I was making 60,000 a year. And right before I quit that job to go take this other job, I was offered a role with a pretty cool company, which, might have also been a really great path to take. And they had offered me $80,000 to do that role. And I was pretty young at the time. That was a pretty unbelievable amount of money for me. But I turned it down to go and try and start my own business. How much did it cost me? Well, if I were to count up the salary that I did not take, the money that I spent on the business and invested in the business, because I did go broke doing this, and all like the lost wages and everything, somewhere around $200,000. But here's what it did do. It got me out of marketing. It got me out of advertising. It put me into the education world. It got me a new job as a career coach, which wasn't the original goal, but was a pretty great outcome. That job got me a job that paid even more, or that work that I did as a career coach, getting paid very little, actually got me a job that paid even more than the original job that was offered to me years prior. And now I have my own business, building what you see here. The price of admission was high to be able to build this company, but it was worth it at the end of the day, because what else was I going to do? Stay in my very first job, which I felt was a toxic environment? So that's what we've got to do throughout our career. We've got to continually figure out what the price of admission is. And in order to do that, we also have to know, what are our worst case scenarios? I knew going into it, I might lose all my money. I wasn't blind to that fact. I wasn't naive. I knew that this might not work and I might go broke. So in order to start my business, I moved back home with my family. But I knew what my worst case scenario was. And to be honest, in your mid to late 20s, living at home with your parents, pretty embarrassing when it comes to your social life and having to commute into the city and trying to go on dates and being like, I got to go home and catch a train for my parents. Like, that is an embarrassing place to be in your mid to late 20s. Probably more embarrassing in your 30s. Probably more embarrassing in your 40s. But are you willing to do it? Now, you don't have to move home with your family. You don't have to go broke. You don't have to do any of these things. You can keep your job and build this stuff on the side for 2, 3, 4 years until you can make a confident move into your next role with no issue.